Now, KOAT Action 7 News live at 10. Coverage you can count on.
An Albuquerque woman was convicted in a crash that killed a bicyclist, and now she's back behind bars after another incident behind the wheel.
KOAT Action 7 News reporter Ana Velasquez is live with how Miranda Pacheco ended up in jail once again.
Well, Doug and Shelley, police say that Miranda Pacheco crashed into a building. She was headed southbound here on Eubank when she jumped the median, went through the intersection, jumped the curb, and crashed into that building at 10 miles an hour. State corrections officials picked up Miranda Pacheco Tuesday afternoon after they say she tested positive for drugs and/or alcohol. She's been on probation for a 2012 burglary conviction, but back in 2010 she crashed into bicyclist Dave Anderson and killed him. His wife Sherry saw it all.
She's dangerous, and she has proven that over and over. And you even kill somebody, and you're still getting behind the wheel of a car.
In that case, a jury convicted Pacheco of careless driving. She served 90 days in jail. Last year, Pacheco pleaded to a deferred guilty judgment for DWI.
She is very fortunate. She hasn't killed herself and taken somebody else with her.
Anderson just learned of Pacheco's most recent run-in with the law. According to the police report on June 17th, Pacheco crashed into a business. When witnesses tried talking to her, she reportedly passed out in the driver's seat. Medics told police they treated her for a possible narcotic overdose. Despite this latest setback, Anderson says she still prays Pacheco can turn her life around.
I want you locked up in prison, but take the Bible I gave you with you. Open it. Read these incredible stories that talk about the power of redemption.
Now, luckily, no one inside the building that she crashed into. According to police, no one was hurt. Miranda Pacheco was taken to the hospital and treated for minor injuries. Reported live from Northeast Albuquerque, I'm Ana Velasquez, KOAT Action 7 News.
Pacheco is currently being held without bond for her probation violation. A judge will decide how long she's locked up. New details now on the little girl who was left alone in a hot car for more than an hour. We have learned she was dehydrated, but she'll be okay. Police took her parents into custody at the Home Depot at Central and Eubank in Albuquerque. Someone had called 911 after seeing the 5-year-old locked in the hot truck with the windows up. Police say she was in there for more than an hour. No word on whether her parents will face charges.
Tonight, we know much more about the man who was shot and killed by U.S. Marshals. We have learned it happened when they were trying to arrest Anthony Chavez for a federal probation violation. KOAT Action 7 News reporter Laura Terrain has more on who he was.
Court records and this mugshot highlight Anthony Chavez's criminal past. Last year, he was arrested for vehicular homicide. Those charges were pending when he died. But in this picture, friends and neighbors say they see a very different Anthony Chavez, a family man who left behind a wife and 2 kids when he was shot and killed by U.S. Marshals. They were trying to serve him with an arrest warrant.
He was a great guy, very great guy. I mean, he would drop what he's doing to help anybody. At any time, really. Royce
Platero says Chavez offered up his landscaping expertise to redo Platero's yard.
He did my entire yard, my front yard, my backyard, everything, and he was an awesome guy.
In the 6 days since the shooting, Action 7 News has pressed for answers from the Marshals, Albuquerque Police, and the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office about what happened. Finally, APD has shed some light. They say Marshal Kenneth Daniels shot and killed Chavez after trying to serve an arrest warrant at his home. Our partners at the Journal report he was on federal probation after he admitted to smuggling undocumented immigrants into the U.S.
He was a very good guy. So I would honestly, as close as my son is with his son, I would honestly say we're practically family.
Platero tells me he'll stay in touch with the family, and so will his son, who's very close to Chavez's little boy and has a message for his best friend.
Sorry for losing your dad.
Now, there's still a lot we don't know. No one has said exactly what led up to the shooting or whether Chavez was armed at the time. We've asked the U.S. Marshals for more details many times, including today, and we'll continue to press for those answers. Back to you.
We've learned more about a U.S. Forest Service firefighter who was injured in a small explosion. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is leading the investigation. An ATF agent says the firefighter was stapling fire warning signs to a post in the Santa Fe National Forest yesterday when he saw a suspicious suspicious-looking glass jar nearby. He moved it with his foot. It exploded, causing a rash on his arm and leg. His name has not been released, but officials say he's from a forest district in California and was on assignment here in New Mexico. Now the ATF is trying to find out who put that jar in the forest.
We're actually conducting interviews and trying to determine what on earth happened. The only problem is that we're so early on to say, if there was any foul play.
Investigators say they checked for more suspicious jars, but didn't find any. They say if someone is eventually connected to this, there could be severe punishment.
After children stumbled upon a dead man in Espanola, police are trying to figure out if he was murdered. They don't know how he died, but believe he was there for quite some time before the kids found him. They say he had bruises on his body and was face down in an arroyo. The kids say they were heading home on the same path they always take when they saw the body.
It's unfortunate that the children had to be the ones to find the male. If they went to found him, who knows how long it would have been for someone else to come along and find the male.
Police say the man was in his mid-40s. They'll release his name after notifying family.
A Vietnam veteran's death at the Albuquerque VA hospital is getting a lot of attention, especially from lawmakers. Last week, 71-year-old Jim Garcia collapsed in the cafeteria during a heart attack. He died after waiting nearly 15 minutes for an ambulance to come and take him around the corner. KOAT Action 7 News reporter Kristen Swanson tells us local lawmakers are surprised and angry.
When Tom Katonic heard his friend Jim Garcia died last week, he was shocked. But it was when Katonic learned that Garcia had a heart attack at the VA hospital in Albuquerque and died.
That was even more surprising.
It's surprise and now outrage coming from people hearing about the 71-year-old's death. He had to wait nearly 15 minutes for an ambulance to drive him just 500 yards to the emergency room. VA officials say staff did perform CPR on Garcia when he collapsed in the cafeteria, but current VA policy doesn't allow staff to transport him from one building to another.
It's not just friends and family that are shocked, but also lawmakers in Washington.
Senator Tom Udall says he's appalled by what happened. In a statement, Udall says, "I've been extremely disappointed in the VA's lack of communication about its emergency policy, which I believe needs to be reviewed urgently." Officials with the VA say the policy is being reviewed, but when Representative Michelle Lujan Grisham requested a copy, top officials refused to send one to her office. It's been almost a week since that request. In a statement, Lujan Grisham says the inability of officials to answer basic questions in a timely fashion is yet another reason the public has lost faith. A veteran himself, Katonic says it's hard to believe his friend died with so many resources just a few hundred yards away.
And I would think if I was sitting in the VA hospital, if something went amiss, that somebody ought to be able to fix that pretty rapidly.
In Albuquerque, Kirsten Swanson, KOAT Action 7 News.
Some Marines in California were so moved by one of our stories, they decided to help a New Mexico man they never met. You may remember hearing about the Ninja Bandits. More than a month ago, a burglar dressed like a ninja broke into Daniel Levine's home. Levine is terminally ill. He told us at the time the thief stole all of his savings, nearly $2,000. After those Marines saw our story online, they started a fundraiser to replace the money.
It's such a tragic thing to have somebody invade your home in addition to this horrible, process that he's going through, and, such a, tragic stage in his life that it seemed like somebody had to do something about that.
Levine is very thankful for the donations, and he says they have helped renew his faith in people.
Only Action 7 News showed you a bucket full of medical waste dumped in northwest Albuquerque. Now fire officials are trying to track down how it got there. A man riding go-karts with his son found empty vials and IV tubes from a container with a biohazard symbol. He came across it near 90th and Los Volcanes. The man told us he called the fire department about it, but AFD says it has no record of that. But we're told crews cleaned it up after they noticed it yesterday.
You see quite a bit of garbage around here, the mattresses, chairs, and everything. That would be really nice if they can get a handle on that.
Officials say the property owner is responsible for cleaning up what has been illegally dumped, but it's not clear who owns that lot. We also don't know where the waste came from and who dumped it. We will try to find out.
One man has caused a ton of controversy. Some say Kit Carson was a legend of the Old West. Others call him a murderer. People in Taos were divided over what to do with the park named after him. As KOAT Action 7 News reporter Alana Grimstad explains, the park itself is now being divided too.
I'm really pissed off.
Old wounds are wide open.
How dare you?
And as one person put it, they're badly bleeding.
Who in the hell are you to change our history? You're nobody.
People are furious over Kit Carson Park in Taos.
Painful to our people.
Named after the famous mountain man and explorer from the 1800s.
Native Americans in this country have had a raw deal.
Members of the Taos Pueblo say they're deeply offended the park was named after a man who they believe murdered hundreds of their ancestors.
The history surrounding Kit Carson is one that is shrouded by controversy.
Some historians believe Carson forced thousands of Navajo to march from the Four Corners to southeast New Mexico in what's come to be called the Long Walk. Hundreds, if not thousands, either died during the journey or once they reached their destination. But some in Taos say that's just not true.
Indian hater that man was not.
Believing Carson was a friend to the Indians, not their killer.
Nothing. I promise you, absolutely nothing could be further from the truth.
The Taos board initially voted to change the park's name, and controversy erupted.
Plenty of Kit Carson.
But now the board has reversed its decision, instead a compromise.
It's a good thing, so we can remain friends.
The part of the park where Carson is buried will keep its name. The rest will get a new name, and people hope it brings an end to a divisive chapter in the town's history.
What's happening here is beautiful. As much as it's heartfelt, as much as it's difficult.
In Taos, Alana Grimstad, KOAT Action 7 News.
A new committee will work to come up with a name to hopefully please everyone.
Another day, another round of storms in New Mexico.
That's right, Doug. In fact, you're going to about see proof of what can happen when heavy rain starts falling. This is what was left of a New Mexico State Police car. The officer was driving between Espanola and Taos. A boulder came loose, rolled down a mountain, and smashed into the patrol car. The officer wasn't hurt, but police say it's a reminder to be on your guard when driving through the mountains in the rainy season. Speaking of rain, there's more out there right now. We'll tell you where it's going and when more storms will fire up in my first alert forecast.
The state promised big changes to one of the most dangerous off-ramps in New Mexico. That was a year ago after we showed you all the accidents that happen here. Now, Target 7 finds out whether the work made any difference for drivers.
And a woman discovers she's living in a house of horrors. The deadly crimes that took place in her basement and why she's being forced to stay.
You're watching KOAT Action 7 News live at 10.
It's a place you've traveled to catch a game or a concert, and I-25 in Cesar Chavez had a reputation as one of the most dangerous intersections in the state.
After a Target 7 investigation last year, the state made some changes. Tonight, investigative reporter Nancy Laughlin finds out if they paid off.
They are crowd pleasers, the Lobos, the Topes, the fans, the stands. But sometimes getting to a game, a gamble.
And the traffic and the noise is rude.
I-25 in Cesar Chavez, a part of the interstate built back in the 1960s. Before all this boomed, and the cars in this intersection did too.
We used to have like 3 and 4, but now it's cut down a lot on the racks.
3 and 4 a week?
Yes.
This is video from Sky 7 last year. Traffic backing up on the freeway, trying to exit the interstate during a sporting event. After our Target 7 investigation, the state stepped in and made some changes, putting in an extra lane at the Cesar Chavez exit. This is what it looks like now before an Isotopes game.
I have noticed. It's easier to get here. It's very seldom backed up.
Topes general manager John Traub takes this route every day. He says fans aren't shy about telling him what they think inside the ballpark and out.
Fans have been absolutely ecstatic at the fact that they're not backing up as far on the freeway. It's easier to get off. It's easier to get to game.
And easier to leave sporting events, too. The Department of Transportation added a turn lane for people getting back onto the interstate heading south. Before that, drivers often did a Hail Mary while going through the intersection.
They felt compelled to make the movement because they were holding up traffic behind them, and they take a chance, and oftentimes there was a car coming that they didn't see.
A Department of Transportation spokesman says accidents are down. Right now, the numbers aren't in to back that. The last crash reports available are from 2 years ago. 155 accidents here. They say the latest numbers will come out next month, but the poles and streetlights that were often a casualty.
They haven't had to replace anything out here in the year since we made that change.
People who live around here say even with the improvements and extra lanes,
it hasn't really fixed human nature.
There are still some crashes.
Time once a week, but not nearly as bad as it was.
Nancy Laughlin, KOAT Action 7 News.
A crime-fighting program that started right here at KOAT is now solving crimes all over the world. From countries like Canada, Australia, Europe, and more, crooks are being caught with the help of Crime Stoppers. It's a concept that began with an Albuquerque police detective. In 1976, he needed leads in a murder, so he approached KOAT's general manager, Max Klauer, and asked to air a reenactment. Coming up tomorrow night on Action 7 News, Ana Velasquez shows us how that simple request led to the birth of a program that has helped police get justice all across the globe.
It was a little active earlier and a little active again tonight a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was really pounding rain just to the west of us. You saw the thunder and lightning. In fact, there was rain and thunder and lightning around Rio Rancho. This was caught on our I-25 cam. Another storm brought lots of rain to the area of Lordsburg. A viewer saw this flooding in the front yard. And check out the hail in Santa Fe today. Be sure to share all your photos with us at the local page at KOAT.com. All right, here's what we're looking at right now. We still have that flood watch in effect throughout western portions of the state tonight. As we move on in through the forecast period, you can see big storms to the west of us, but these canyon winds were quite strong, and what they did is they kept that rain away from us. We talked about at 6 o'clock how we'd have to have the canyon wind stop for the rains to drop down. That has not happened yet, but you can see the big rains never did make it into the western portion of the city, and all of this is the rain that did accumulate. Some areas back here, western sections near To'Hajiilee, about 2 inches or more with the Doppler rainfall estimates. Now, right now the winds have shifted to the north. It looks like as they settle down later on, some of this rain to the north could actually drop into Albuquerque metro area, but a better shot of that dropping into around Santa Fe. Here's the midnight projection. Some of that could clip our area, some to the west central mountains as well. A little bit accumulating more throughout northeastern portions of New Mexico overnight, and we'll go through the day. It probably won't be as active as what we had, but even in the metro area, if a storm does form, it could be a locally heavy downpour. A better shot at storms forming on a scattered basis, even though it looks less active, simply because there won't be the canyon winds like we experienced today that hamper the thunderstorms in the metro area. You see on Thursday, nothing to sweep out this moisture, so the showers and thunderstorms will still be in play. As we roll around the state, we'll look at the 12-hour planner. We're going to be humid in the morning. It will be warm in the afternoon, and the potential for those scattered showers and thunderstorms late afternoon and evening. Not everybody will participate, but they will be around. Roswell, Artesia, Carlsbad on into Hobbs. It will be hot with temperatures in the 90s. Some showers and thunderstorms will again form throughout the Sacramento Mountains. Southwest, there will be thunderstorms primarily around the Gila. Some of those could work into places like Lordsburg and Deming, much like we saw today, and some could be strong like we saw today as well. There will be scattered showers and thunderstorms favoring the higher terrain, especially southwestern sections of Colorado, where flash flood watch is in effect primarily afternoon and evening all the way through Friday, and Los Alamos, Santa Fe on into Taos. Enough moisture in play for the afternoon heat to give you a slow-moving thunderstorm throughout the area, and that could bring some pockets of rain. There's been thunderstorms around Santa Fe past couple of days. More of that in the forecast, at least the potential thereof. All into that I-25 corridor from Raton down into Las Vegas, showers and thunderstorms will be present. Up and down the Rio Grande Valley, you get the idea. We'll start off quiet. We'll warm into the 90s and room for those scattered daytime storms. So we still could have some showers and storms after midnight. Dry in the morning. Off and on showers and thunderstorms all the way through the weekend because we still have the humid air in place. It does appear that early next week there would be a potential for us to dry out briefly, but you get the idea. Not everyone is going to get wet in this pattern, but at least, unlike yesterday, we had some drier air sweep in, and that kind of put a damper on mini thunderstorms. We really don't see that in the days ahead, so at least we have an opportunity.
All right, Joe.
Yeah.
What if you learned your house was once a crime scene? Next, a disturbing cold case turns real for the woman renting this house. And that's not the only twist.
And someone's help does more harm than good. We sort out some seriously wrong information being given to New Mexico voters. A Missouri woman discovered some frightening news about the house she was renting. It used to be a torture chamber.
Unbelievable. And it was only by luck she even found out. Chris Haggis explains the landlord was in on the whole thing.
What'd you think when you found this place?
I loved it. Like, I love the house.
Katrina McGaw signed the lease without worry. Her Section 8 voucher covered $810 in rent. The landlord seemed nice. No worries at all. Until a family member told her to check out a cold case documentary about serial killers airing on the A&E network.
Oh, my God.
Seriously, imagine if this happened to you.
And then there it is. The house that I'm living in.
First words out of his mouth
pops up, and it's like, it's real.
Whoa. Talk about sending chills down her spine. She was living in the same Ferguson house serial killer Maury Travis used as a torture chamber. The landlord even gave her the dining room table, the same one from the crime scene photos.
When she showed us the house, she was like, you guys can have this table if you want.
Those are the same chairs.
Yeah, same chairs, same table, everything.
But it's what happened downstairs that freaks her out. That's where Travis recorded some of his crimes. At one point, he sent the Post-Dispatch a map to identify victim number 17. Some of the victims were tied to this pole.
This whole basement was basically his torture chamber. And it's not okay.
It's just too much for McGaw to handle. So she called her landlord begging to get out of the lease, but the landlord wasn't sympathetic. Turns out the landlord is the suspect's mom.
She said, no, you've already signed the lease. You need to stay there until your lease is up.
So I called Travis's mother. She claims she told McGaw about the house's dark past. McGaw says that's not true. She would have remembered the people murdered in the basement part. So I asked a real estate expert about the rules. Laura Wayness at Keller Williams.
If a serial killer lives in the house and kills his victims in the house, you don't have to say that to somebody who's renting or buying.
Correct. No, you don't have to say that.
Wayness says murder, suicides, and violent crimes don't require disclosure. Only material defects need to be noted.
Do you feel like there should be a law that you should be told about something like this?
I definitely feel there should be a law. Like, there's no way that she should get away with thinking that it's okay not to tell people what happened in this house.
Wow. Police say up to 20 women may have been killed in that house, but they'll never be certain. The suspected killer committed suicide in 2002. As for Katrina, the St. Louis Housing Authority is letting her move out at the end of the month. Can you imagine? The story just gets increasingly more creepy.
I can't believe that the neighbors didn't say before she, like right when she's moving in, do you really know what you're doing? And how does she get a housing subsidy check? Right. Don't they check and make sure where the house is? That the house is legit?
Just renting the house. Didn't buy it, right? A&E, you're sitting there at home with your popcorn.
That's a slumlord right
there. That's my dining room table. Crazy story. Yeah. Someone is confusing voters in Bernalillo County, how they're using misinformation to make a quick buck.
And Harry Potter is back. The new story from J.K. Rowling years after the characters grow up and get jobs.
You're watching KOAT Action 7 News live at 10.
A warning to Albuquerque residents: you could run into people trying to help you register to vote, but they may be giving you the wrong information.
KOAT Action 7 News reporter Laura Terrain separates fact from fiction.
The woman in charge of voter registration in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County is very concerned.
We have been receiving a number of different reports over the last month or so from a variety of different individuals saying that they had been approached by folks
that are telling people they need to re-register to vote every 2 to 5 years. Maggie Toulouse Oliver says that's absolutely false.
Once you're registered, as long as you remain at your address, you are going to be on the voting rolls as long as you want, whether you vote or not.
Toulouse Oliver tells me these registration agents were giving out bad information at various Walmart locations around town and here at the Albuquerque Biopark. So why are these people asking for locals to register again? Toulouse Oliver speculates they were trying to make a fast buck.
These individuals that are out there registering voters are being paid by the individual voter registration card, and so, perhaps that's the reason.
Whatever the reason may be, she says, rest assured, register once and you're good for as long as you stay in your home. Laura Terrain, KOAT Action 7 News.
If you think someone's given you bad information, the county clerk's office would like you to call them right away.
A woman claims she robbed a Santa Fe hotel for beer money. Santa Fe police tell us Amanda Ahumada is seen here getting out of a car before going into a hotel and threatening threatening employees before she left with some money. Police are still investigating leads into the identities of the two men seen with her during the robbery. She is now at the Torrance County Detention Center on a parole violation and will be sent to Santa Fe County Detention on armed robbery charges.
New developments today in the crisis at the border. Federal authorities are asking for backup security from Eddy County, and the government is willing to pay for it. The Carlsbad Current-Argus reports Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials say they need more manpower, and they're looking to contract 90 more people. Federal officials are using the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Artesia as a detention center for nearly 700 Central American women and children. The three barracks will hold people as they await deportation or seek asylum. And President Obama is asking Congress for billions in emergency funding to help overwhelmed Border Patrol agents and improve conditions. More than 50,000 unaccompanied children from Central America and Mexico have come into the U.S. illegally now since October. Sally Kidd explains how that money would be used.
On the nation's southwest border, an overwhelming flow of unaccompanied migrant children continues. The president is asking Congress for $3.7 billion to deploy additional resources, a surge in funding and manpower aimed at expanding the government's capacity to deal with the influx.
If you take Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill at face value, then you would expect that their actions would back up their rhetoric. Their rhetoric indicates that this is a pressing situation that needs to be dealt with immediately.
The White House says the money would be used to expand border enforcement and surveillance, provide additional housing and detention space, and bring in some 40 additional immigration judge teams to expedite court proceedings.
The immigration judge part of the immigration system has been underfunded for years. I don't think anybody knows how much is enough. I do know that this amount of money is a significant amount of money.
House Speaker John Boehner says the president's proposal falls short. He and other Republicans say the National Guard should be sent to provide support. Wednesday, the president will meet with Texas Governor Rick Perry during a fundraising trip to Dallas. Some say that's not good enough.
Inexplicable why he would refuse to carve out just 1 hour out of his fundraising schedule over the next 2 days in Texas to come to the border.
Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson arrived in Guatemala today to discuss with government officials what can be done on their end to address the crisis. In Washington, Sally Kidd, KOAT, Action 7 News.
The Senate Appropriations Committee will hold a hearing on the president's funding request Thursday.
Governor Susana Martinez blames the border crisis on Congress and the president. She tells our partners at the Journal more undocumented immigrants are crossing the border because of mixed signals from the government. The governor says parents drop off their kids because they think the feds will just give up and take them in. She's also not happy with how the government is handling the facility housing hundreds of those immigrants here in southern New Mexico.
New technology out of the Sandia National Laboratories could make our electronics even smaller and more powerful. Scientists have found a way to apply pressure to plates to create smaller nanowires. They say electrons will have a shorter distance to travel, providing more energy and power going through the wire.
Because of the small dimension, they could make the devices like antenna much smaller than the current one. The current models using the cell phone or other devices.
Scientists also say because you can use it to make wires fit almost any shape or size, the technology has almost endless applications.
Here's another chance to be on the silver screen. A casting call for the Emily Blunt movie Sicario is Saturday in Albuquerque. They're looking for Hispanic men, women, and children, along with active and former military members. Crews are also in need of beat-up old cars. It's from 2 to 4:30 at the Los Padillas Community Center. Those who are cast will be paid. It's been 7 years since the last Harry Potter book. The series sold 450 million copies worldwide and now is making a comeback. ABC's Lindsay Davis tells us why we can't call him the boy wizard anymore.
When we first met this bespectacled orphan boy filled with magic,
Make a wish, Harry.
He was celebrating his birthday, just 11 years old.
We can expect great things from you.
Over the course of 7 best-selling books and 8 blockbuster movies, we watched this little wizard and his friends grow. But this was the last we heard from Harry Potter. Until today, a new chapter. Harry, now a father of 2, is about to turn 34. And while he has a couple of threads of silver in his hair, he continues to wear the distinctive round glasses he wore as a boy. Ron, whose famous ginger hair appears to be slightly thinning, runs a joke shop and is married to Hermione, now a mother of 2, enjoying a successful career in magical law enforcement. Yes, Harry Potter is back. Sort of. in a post on J.K. Rowling's Pottermore website.
Harry hasn't left me to the degree that I thought he would, and I'm quite glad about that.
Rowling, who has described being hounded by tabloid press, writes this 1,500-word update as if it were a newspaper report written by fictitious gossip columnist Rita Skeeter. Perhaps interjecting a bit of non-fiction, she writes, anyone closely connected with Harry Potter reaps the benefits and must pay the penalty of public interest. The penalty of public interest today? Rowling's Pottermore website reportedly crashed. Apparently too many people were eager to read what this time may be Harry's final chapter. Lindsay Davis, ABC News, New York.
Albuquerque's downtown is struggling to keep businesses around, but Mayor Richard Berry believes he can change that. The mayor wants to create what he calls an entertainment hub by First and Central. It would have restaurants and shops and host concerts. Mayors before him have tried to revamp downtown with similar ideas for sports arenas and entertainment centers. None of them ever happened.
They can set aside the space, but unless you've got actual companies with actual money committed to coming in, all you've got is an empty lot right now.
The mayor wants developers to send in their proposals by November. He says the city has $3 million to put toward the project. With the Dow soaring above 17,000 last week, are you thinking it's time to take the money and run? Analysts say not so fast. Some expert advice in this Project Economy report. Many analysts say now's not the time to sell your stocks and redo your portfolio because this bull market may still have room to run. Even though many see 17,000 as a purely psychological milestone, it came quickly. Analysts weren't expecting the Dow to hit 17K until December. And it took just 7 months for the average to go from 16,000 to 17,000. So why hold on for longer if we're seeing these highs? Well, first, the experts say look at the big picture. This year's performance is only modest. The Dow is up about 3%. The S&P 500 is up just 7% this year. Compare that to the whopping 27% rally last year. Second, if you look at the historical value of stocks, they're still not that expensive. So while you're paying more for stocks because the market is pushing higher, analysts say overall those prices don't suggest a pullback quite yet. Also, the economy is getting better. Housing has been another bright spot. New and existing home sales are up, and mortgage rates continue to stay pretty low. Investors are also looking forward to corporate earnings, the report cards of public companies in the United States. If those profit numbers are solid, that could help keep the rally going.
A real head scratcher of a technological marvel, and it's hot on the web. Apparently, if you want to have your own drone, all you need is a 3D printer. This one took 9 parts that were assembled into a drone that can fly when you add a remote-controlled motor. The hope is someday these devices can be used to deliver packages, especially in remote areas. And because you print them, you can adjust the design to fit your needs. You've heard that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, this guy is hoping this video is worth $10 million. Andrew Rector fell asleep at a Yankees-Red Sox game, and ESPN showed it a few times, more than a few times, and broadcasters mocked him for napping. Well, he's not happy and is suing the sports network for $10 million. And Major League Baseball is also named in the suit, which, by the way, he will lose. For more on these and other hot on the web stories, go to KOAT.com in the middle of our homepage.
Oh, boy.
You imagine?
I've seen
this
that
is
a lot,
like
too.
this. It's like big fat. It's like,
You know what? It could have been worse if what? If he had a drool going, you know?
He may have.
He might have. It wasn't a flattering pose.
Oh, they did. They would have
but
zoomed in, I think.
Yeah.
Don't go to the game if you're tired. That's pretty tired.
That's pretty tired. That's pretty tired. You're gonna pay a price either way. Okay, what we're looking at is we were having that powerful front. It moved through the eastern portion of the state. We were preparing you for this yesterday, and it pushed in a lot of humid air. Look how lit up it is right now compared to yesterday, which was kind of dry. By comparison, we had the canyon winds we talked about at the 6. If it stays up, we won't get much moisture here in the Albuquerque area, and that's been the play. However, as the canyon winds taper off, some of this rain could work down into the Albuquerque Santa Fe areas. Nothing too organized, though. Most of that will be to the north and to the west of our area. This will show you an ongoing tab between now and late in the day tomorrow of how much will accumulate. So when we look at how much will accumulate, not much between now and 8 o'clock in the morning. More of that throughout western portions of New Mexico. And adding to that total, it would be more western sections of the state, north, but not so much around Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Santa Fe, but there's still room for those slow-moving downpours, and that could have some localized heavy rain, which those forecast models really don't pick up on. They just kind of do the broad spread thing. All right, 50s and 60s for your overnight lows. Daytime highs warming into the 80s and 90s. So it'll be another warm one. As we work through the next 7 days, we'll see those scattered showers and thunderstorms in the forecast. Wednesday all the way through the weekend. There is some suggestion that early next week it could dry out a little bit before it starts to ramp up again. So the takeaway from this is that each and every afternoon and evening, you know, these storms are moving so slow. I mean, you could have just like flooding rains in your neighborhood, bone dry everywhere else, so you just need to be alert.
All right, Joe.
The deadly smallpox virus was wiped out in America, but some of it was left behind. Next, a discovery that forced the CDC to beef up security. But first, here's what you'll see after Jimmy Kimmel.
Doug and Shelley later tonight on Nightline, accident or murder? Tonight, new details in the investigation of the horrific hot car death of baby Cooper Harris. Search warrants executed. His mother now under scrutiny. Plus, some call the race across America the world's toughest bike race. That's on Nightline. Now at midnight, right here on KOAT 7. Back to you.
And more than 20 people trapped on a broken roller coaster. What knocked them off the track at Six Flags?
You're watching KOAT Action 7 News live at 10.
Smallpox is a deadly virus that we never thought we'd see again until it was found in a lab.
Could it infect again? And how did this happen? ABC's Dr. Richard Besser has the answers.
Tonight, real alarm about how 6 vials of smallpox, one of history's most feared viruses, were left in a low-security FDA laboratory for decades. Forgotten in a refrigerated storage room at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland.
If this material is infectious and these vials had broken, what could have happened?
There is a potential that someone could have contracted the disease.
The vials, believed to be from the 1950s, were discovered 1 week ago when the contents of the storage room were being moved. Opening that box, workers saw an alarming label, variola. That's smallpox. They quickly moved it to a biohazard level 3 lab, one with cameras, scanners, and alarms, where everyone wears protective gear. The National Security Council was notified, and 5 agencies, including the FBI, worked out a plan to transport the deadly virus safely to the CDC in Atlanta. Late last night, the vials were packed up, escorted to the airport by federal and local police, and flown on a government plane to CDC headquarters. Smallpox, which is highly contagious, killed 2 million people a year as recently as 1967. But it was wholly eradicated after an unprecedented worldwide campaign to get people vaccinated. By international agreement, samples lived on in only 2 labs, the CDC in Atlanta and one in Siberia, or so we thought until today. Law enforcement have long feared what could happen if terrorists get their hands on smallpox and turn it into a weapon. The newly discovered vials are now in a level 4 biohazard lab. Security is so tight, you now need an eye scan to get access. The smallpox discovery comes just weeks after the CDC acknowledged possibly exposing dozens of lab workers to anthrax. Those workers currently being treated with 2 months of antibiotics.
First anthrax, now smallpox. Should we be worried?
In both of these cases, which are unfortunate, CDC's response was swift and deliberate to ensure public safety and to try to get to the root cause of what had happened.
The good news is the vials weren't open, so no one was endangered. And if the virus had gotten out, we have smallpox vaccine that would have protected anyone who was exposed. Dr. Richard Besser, ABC News, New York.
Matt Sandusky will soon talk about being sexually abused by his father, former Penn State assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky. Matt says he was methodically controlled and manipulated by his dad. Jerry Sandusky was convicted 2 years ago on 45 counts of sexual abuse. His adopted son, Matt, was not part of that criminal case. He says his father started abusing him when he was 8. Other times he would pretend to be asleep so his father would leave. Oprah Winfrey will interview Matt Sandusky. It will be broadcast on her network.
More rocket strikes today in the Holy Land in both Israel and Gaza. The surge of violence comes after 3 Israeli teenagers were killed and the murder revenge of a Palestinian. And Israeli officials claim the conflict between their country and the militants goes beyond that. Marcy Gonzalez has the latest.
Sirens blaring in Israel, warning of more air raids from Palestinian militants. That rocket, one of several today aimed at Tel Aviv, stopped by Israel's Iron Dome defense system. Closer to the Gaza border, people are taking cover in bomb shelters as tensions between Israel and Hamas escalate.
It's scary just to be around the noises and the bombing and everything.
Israel responding to the onslaught of rockets, saying its military has hit about 100 targets in Gaza, including this, the home of a reported Hamas leader, where at least 6 people were killed, including 2 children. Along with increasing its air offensive, Israel is now considering a ground invasion of Gaza, authorizing the army today to activate as many as 40,000 reserve troops.
We cannot compromise with death. We cannot compromise with rockets. We cannot compromise with this sort of a behavior. And we shall stop them.
Marcy Gonzalez, ABC News, New York.
Israeli officials say there are no efforts for a ceasefire right now, and it doesn't expect attacks from either side to stop anytime soon. The government may have gotten a peek at your selfie. The Washington Post researched 160,000 intercepted communications provided by Edward Snowden, and the paper says it found baby photos, selfies, medical records, and resumes. The newspaper also found that nearly 90% of the communications the NSA grabbed were from ordinary internet users.
A Six Flags theme park is being investigated after a tree branch knocked a coaster off its track. The accident stranded 22 people for hours last night just outside of Los Angeles. Dangling way up in the air for hours, what was supposed to be a fun ride took a wrong turn and became frightening for all the wrong reasons.
Incoming units to Magic Mountain. We still have victims on the ride.
22 people were trapped on the Ninja ride for nearly 3 hours after a branch of a tree hit the tracks and derailed the coaster's lead car.
We heard yelling. It sounded like they were panicking. Yeah. Because they didn't know what to do.
The ride, called the Black Belt of Coasters, normally looks like this. It speeds along at 55 miles an hour, several times coming close to trees, but after the branch fell, it looked like this. That white metal arm is supposed to be attached to the red railing.
There's obviously a lot of panic, confusion when something like this happens.
Firefighters struggled through thick branches to free the riders about 25 feet off the ground, lowering them one by one.
It was really scary. I was really sketched out to get on any other rides.
In spite of the incident, thrill seekers were back at the park today with some reservations.
My sister was kind of scared that I came, but I hope the rides are good and nothing bad happens.
The accident comes just over a week after dozens of people were stranded for hours 200 feet up a tower at SeaWorld in San Diego. A power failure stalled that ride. 4 people on the ride at Magic Mountain received minor injuries.
People started lining up overnight in Seattle for the opening of Washington's first legal marijuana store. Although more than 20 stores opened up across the state today, Cannabis City is the only one in Seattle. The shop expected between 2,000 and 5,000 customers. All the excitement comes nearly 2 years after voters first legalized recreational pot.
It's taken years. It's not something that happened overnight.
Security personnel will be at the store to check customers' IDs. They must be 21 or over to purchase pot. Washington and Colorado voted to legalize marijuana in 2012. Pot sales began in Colorado January 1st.
Now here's Chief Meteorologist Joe Diaz with tonight's first alert weather video.
A powerful typhoon hit parts of Japan today. The storm rolled through Okinawa. It paralyzed transportation and knocked out power to thousands on the southern Japanese island. 17 people were injured, one seriously, and a man was reported missing from a fishing boat in the rough seas to the north. The storm is now weakening, but will continue to produce a lot of rain. In New Mexico, the monsoon season is finally bringing rain. In parts of Arizona, it's still dust. Storms are popping up each afternoon, and in some cases, they're bringing more blowing dust than wetting rains. The Phoenix airport has only received 1/100th of an inch so far this monsoon season.
A look at tonight's top stories next.
And a final look at your morning forecast.
Here's tonight's top stories.
A woman convicted of a deadly crash involving a bicyclist is behind bars again. State corrections officials picked up Miranda Pacheco this afternoon for a probation violation. Back in June, police say she crashed into a building, possibly under the influence of drugs. In 2010, Pacheco crashed into Dave Anderson while he and his family were riding on the bike path. Anderson was killed. Pacheco spent 90 days in jail after being convicted of careless driving.
Tonight, we've learned the man shot and killed by U.S. Marshal last week left behind a wife and 2 children. Investigators say a marshal fired on Anthony Chavez while serving an arrest warrant. Chavez has been on federal probation after he admitted to smuggling undocumented immigrants into the U.S. We still do not know what led to the shooting or if he was armed.
Things got heated in Taos today as people continued to clash over whether to rename a park. Kit Carson Park is controversial because the man it's named after is considered by some to be a murderer. Historians believe he forced thousands of Navajo to march hundreds of miles. Many didn't survive. Some in Taos think the park should get a new name. Others want it to stay the way it is. So the board decided on a compromise. The part of the park where Carson is buried will keep his name. The other half will get a new name to be chosen later on.
Now, here's Joe with the morning forecast.
Well, we're going to have a couple of showers overnight once the winds start to settle down, those canyon winds. But you get the idea. It'll be humid in the morning. With the heat of the day, there will be some more scattered showers and thunderstorms to work around. And there's nothing to sweep out the humid air that was introduced today. So those scattered showers and thunderstorms will be in play all the way through the weekend. There is some potential for a brief drying trend as we get into early next week.
All right, thanks for watching.
Jimmy Kimmel's next.
Good night.
In the land of enchantment, more New Mexicans choose and trust KOAT Action 7 News than any other source. That's coverage you can count on.